Yeah, so for anyone who has never heard of us, Break the Cycle is a national nonprofit that inspires and supports young people, and we identify young people as being between the ages of 12 to 24 to build healthy relationships and create a culture without abuse. We have offices in LA, in Washington, D.C., and in Austin, Texas, with a few remote staff. And some of the core offerings of our organization are around providing training and technical assistance for adults serving youth, similar to this. We also, in our DC office, do a lot of policy work and offer free legal services to young people in the DC area who are navigating legal remedies to address their dating violence or sexual violence cases. And then the biggest prong of our work is actually partnering with young people across the country and supporting them in different projects around social media activism, peer-to-peer education, and also developing training and resources to educate adults.
That's great. Thank you. And I know that I have found Break the Cycle's resources and TA so useful over the years. So thanks for all the work that you all do. So a little bit about CalCASA, for those of you who are not familiar with us. As I said, we're the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and in California we provide leadership, vision, resources to the rape crisis centers up and down the state of California. We also provide vision and resources to individuals and other entities committed to ending sexual violence. And CalCASA also does quite a bit of national work, specifically around prevention. So we have our national online primary prevention project, Prevent Connect, and then we also have a project known as Reliance. And so CalCASA also has multiple offices. We have the one up here in Sacramento where I am. We have an office in Southern California, and then we have a satellite office in Washington, D.C., where the work of Reliance really lives. And I'll ask Tori to put some links to those projects in there in case you're interested in hearing more. But what you are here today to learn about is our ETAG project. And so ETAG stands for End Tech Abuse Across Generations. And this is a national resource center, and we really are aiming to provide not only technical assistance, but resources and just general support to be able to address the use and the misuse of technology in sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking, really focused around youth. So if you are an adult working with youth, a lot of the resources that ETAG has already released and will release are really geared towards that. And we're going to go through more about the specific TA that we offer, but I do want to just highlight that we have a brand new website. I think, Jessica, it's only been up for a couple of months. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so we have this great new website. We'd really encourage you to go visit it. You can get on our mailing list if you're not already on it, on that front page, and you can just kind of click around. If this is, the first that you're hearing about ETAG, we have done some web conferences in the past. We have podcasts and other resources that we'll talk about, but go and take a look at that. Really, really quickly, before we get into the meat of this web conference, I just wanted to share with you how you can use the technology that we're on today. So many of you have already been using the text chat. If you have questions, feel free to put them in there, and we're going to be monitoring the text chat so we can answer those questions. Tori is going to give you a link to where you can download the PowerPoint slides that you're looking at today. If you are streaming audio over your computer and you're having any trouble with the quality, you can give us a call on our 800 number. I want to thank our friends at Aberdeen Captioning for providing closed captioning today, and you should see the captioning right below these PowerPoint slides. So I want to just point out those features of technology. Our learning objectives today, we are really hoping to increase your awareness of technology-facilitated sexual, dating, domestic violence, and stalking cases among youth, and then also really to identify the different types of technical assistance that eTag offers. We love to see exchanging of resources and problem-solving strategies with you all in this web conference today, and then to be able to describe our response resources and materials for youth-serving adults. So that is the goal. Before we get into all of that, I'd love to know who is in the room. And so you did introduce yourself. You told us what the weather was like. It seems like it's mostly cold, but it would also be great to know what sectors you all are representing. So I just dropped a poll onto your screen. Hopefully you can see that. And there are a couple of different categories. So are you an attorney or a prosecutor? Are you working in law enforcement, maybe a judge or other court personnel? Are you a youth-serving professional? Or I see quite a few of you are checking other. So if you are checking other, go ahead and let us know in the text chat what would best describe where you're joining us from. But it does look like we have some folks from the court system. We have some youth-serving professionals. We have Michelle, thank you, victim advocate. Allie, a prevention education specialist at a dual agency, working around domestic violence and sexual assault, a victim advocate at a university, another victim advocate. So I think what you're telling me is that we need to add victim advocate to this poll. And then a CSEC action team member from California. So welcome to you all. It's good to be able to see who's in the room, and it does look like it's shaking down that most of you are typing in and letting us know where you're coming from. There's lots of victim advocates here, folks working in prevention, so that's really great to see, and we appreciate you being here and hope that you get some good tools. So I'm going to go ahead and take that away, and then my next poll is just asking if your organization, if I can drag the poll over for you, if your organization receives funding from the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women. And so yes, no, or unsure. I'm going to show you how folks are voting so you can see this in real time. And so it looks like the majority of folks, by a very slim margin, are definitely receiving funding from OVW, and then some of you either are not or are unsure, and that is really great and helpful for us to know. So thank you for participating in that. Jessica, I'm going to pass it over to you because I think it would be great to kind of hear how technology abuse is even like manifesting and connecting to these different forms of violence.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ashley. So we wanted to start off to frame the area of technical assistance that we can provide under this project. We wanted to start off with some working definitions of how our team sees technology abuse. And so when we say end tech abuse across generations, we really mean how can we end tech-facilitated sexual violence, dating violence, and stalking. Ultimately, what we've seen in our work and in the research that we've been doing is that technology is ultimately another tool in the perpetrator's toolbox to commit these types of crimes. And so just to give a couple of examples, with regard to sexual violence, you may see recorded sexual assaults or sometimes distributed sexual assaults via online communities. You may also see the non-consensual sharing of intimate images or sexting or sexual harassment that happens via social media. And we're seeing similar things with regard to dating and domestic violence. Usually technology-facilitated dating violence looks like controlling behaviors using technology or using different types of GPS or tracking features, for example, even like location sharing in an application to kind of keep tabs on another person, or sharing threats or harassment or constant texting. Those sorts of things is how we're seeing it play out with regards to technology-facilitated dating violence. And then, of course, with stalking, you'll see a lot of cyber stalking, right? So constantly looking at folks' information, or what we'll see is doxing, which is sharing someone's information and trying to get lots of folks to to also invade that person's privacy. So ultimately, those are the types of things that we are looking at when we think about our role in ending tech abuse. And there's a lot of intersections with these issues, right? So a lot of times they're not siloed. You're not seeing just a sexual violence related issue. Sometimes it's happening alongside a dating violence scenario, or stalking and sexual violence might happen, or dating violence with stalking included. So we're definitely seeing a lot of these kind of mixed cases, but ultimately the way our project sees this is technology's role in facilitating those types of crimes. And on the preventative side, technology's role in helping to prevent some of that stuff. So let me click forward. And so when we're thinking about this current technical assistance project, as Ashley mentioned before, we're really more narrowly focused on tech-facilitated abuse among youth. And again, that age demographic for us is 12 to 24. And so when we look at one of the reasons we decided to really focus on young people, aside from that being Break the Cycles demographic, is that we know that young people are using technology in their daily lives. Most of us are already, even adults, but this is even more prevalent across young people because they grew up with technology in ways that some previous generations maybe did not. And so when we look at the literature around tech abuse or tech-facilitated abuse, we know that 1 in 4 young people are experiencing harassment or abuse through technology, and that's within the context of a dating relationship. And some of that even means, that a partner is tampering with their social media accounts or their privacy accounts without their permission. When we think about sexual violence, we know that 1 in 6 young people have received sexually suggested images or videos of someone that they know, and that in cases of non-consensual sharing of intimate images, 60% of those who threaten to expose someone or someone's photos or content usually follow through. So when young people are concerned about that kind of content exposure, that fear is very, very real, and it's very, very valid. And then with regard to stalking and harassment, students are at a higher risk of exposure to cyber harassment if they've spent more time on social media or social networking sites. And again, if you think of any young person in your life, more often than not, they are using social media. So we know that this is part of their lives. And ETAG really wants to figure out ways to address and support those young people when these types of things arise. But also, we want to put an eye towards prevention as well. So to give folks some background to our project, as Ashley mentioned, we do have some existing resources already that we offer on our website, and part of that is because this is actually the second iteration of a technical assistance grant we've been awarded related to technology-facilitated abuse. And so over the past few years, we spent some time kind of researching the topic. So we did a literature review, which you can find on our website. And then we also spent some time just doing interviews and listening to folks in the community. So we heard from youth survivors, we heard from adults who are either impacted by tech abuse in their work, or they may be considered a first responder who's addressing technology abuse cases. So we really got to spend time interviewing advocates and criminal justice professionals, school resource officers, campus administrators, and again, most importantly, young people. And what we learned was really awesome. Some of the things that we learned absolutely were in line with what we were reading in literature. And some of those things include the very obvious, what I feel is a little bit more obvious, that technology offers more opportunities for abusers to abuse. And because of that, it creates challenges, particularly in the criminal justice field, with accountability and prosecution of those kinds of crimes when they are facilitated using technology. We also learned that technology abuse creates challenges for providers as they're trying to support young people and youth survivors who've experienced these kinds of crimes. Some of the other things that we learned from our listening sessions with folks in the community was that one of the reasons they're experiencing some of those challenges is because technology is always changing, and everyone in the field has varying degrees of expertise in technology, and sometimes it's really hard to stay ahead of the ever-changing technology world and social media world. And when we were learning more about the types of supports that folks need in the field, we learned that most folks, it was an unrealistic expectation to think that we would be able to train everybody up to become cyber abuse or tech abuse experts, and that instead folks are really asking for us to create easy to use and accessible resources that they can refer to in the moment to help fill in some of those knowledge gaps. And so that was a lot of the information we heard from adults or adults in criminal justice fields and in advocacy fields. But when we talked to young people, we learned that young people really see technology as a means to connect and to create opportunities to build trust with one another. And the interesting thing that was connected to was related to password sharing or sending, what people refer to as sexting, so sending intimate images or content to their peers or their partners. And it was a really great reframe for us because we knew that sometimes we see this as a negative thing, and it was interesting to look at it from the perspective of young people to say that they know that there is a possible betrayal of trust, but ultimately they're sharing these pieces of information with peers because it is an opportunity to build trust. And then one of the last findings from these listening sessions with young people was that young people don't see us, the adults in their lives, as being a very helpful resource, especially when it involves technology, and that there's a lot of shame and guilt that we can sometimes perpetuate, and young people, just trying to kind of save face are going to avoid us because of that. How often do they hear, like, well, you shouldn't have been sending that text message, or you shouldn't have taken that picture? So they know that adults may not always know how to navigate these scenarios, and they also know that if they tell adults that usually there's going to be some shaming. So they just avoid it altogether in many cases. So what do we do about this, right? What we decided on the ETAG project is that our main focus is to really build capacity of youth-serving adults in these particular areas. So the first one that really rose to the top of importance was supporting youth survivor autonomy. And we talk about this a lot in the domestic and sexual violence movement as a whole, but as it relates to technology abuse, particularly with young people, sometimes because they are minors or because of other factors, we as adult helpers in their lives may sometimes talk over them or make choices for them, and so we heard them loud and clear that they really want adults to know how to support their autonomy, of course well within, the parameters of laws and things like that, but as much as we can to present that focus. We also wanted to make sure that we're building folks' capacity to know their local laws and limitations. And so you can find on our website and through our literature review some of the relevant laws that are maybe both national laws or local state jurisdictional laws, and help connect folks with how to find that information, because sometimes that can be a helpful option for folks. Another focus for us is to build partnerships and cross-training opportunities with youth-serving adults from other disciplines. And so sometimes we get into that space where we do a lot of training just for advocates or just for criminal justice folks or just for school staff. And we saw the benefit of being able to share information across disciplines, and so we want to make sure we're providing that link to one another so that folks can do some shared learning. We also wanted to make sure that we're providing support around implementing survivor-centered and youth-informed safety planning strategies, so you'll see that in some of our resources that we've developed already. And then how to navigate legal as well as non-legal remedies to address tech abuse, because going the legal route is not a viable option for all survivors. And so we want to make sure that we're presenting as many options as we can for young people who are experiencing these types of crimes. And then finally, we really want to take a focus towards preventing tech abuse among youth. And so we have some exciting things to share a little later in the webinar around the prevention side of things, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So with regard to, Ashley mentioned earlier, we have a lot of resources already that you all can tap into on our website. So that top list that you're seeing on your screen is a list of the resources in our eTag toolkit. And again, so you'll see some of those similar priorities from our capacity building visioning presented here in the toolkit. So you can find information about supporting youth survivors. You can find information about a digital evidence collection and safekeeping guide that was co-created with some of our staff attorneys who are doing this work on the daily. And it's really easy and accessible information that a young person could use or an adult who is working with a young person can use as they're helping and navigating whatever case they may be working on with a young person. We also have information around non-consensual sharing of intimate images, and so the guide talks more about the different legal and non-legal options that are available to young people who've experienced that type of exposure. And there's also information about safety planning in relation to technology and cyber safety planning. And then finally, we have the cyber abuse case studies, which are really application tools so that folks can get an idea of the different types of issues that young people may be facing. And we accompany that with strategies for addressing those different types of cases. In addition to our eTag toolkit, we also have a lot of other resources on the website. One of our favorites is the podcast series because it brings so many different voices into our work. You can hear podcast interviews with youth survivors, with a school resource officer, with criminal justice folks and litigators who are trying these cases and finding creative ways to try tech abuse cases. You'll also hear from advocates. So it's just a really great way to hear different perspectives from folks that are impacted or working on these issues from different perspectives. You'll also find some of our more literature-heavy or report-heavy products, including our Title IX and non-consensual sharing legal brief, our literature review, and the listening session analysis. Those last two I mentioned a little bit earlier in our PowerPoint or in our webinar. And then lastly, a resource referral list. And we'll be opening it up a little bit later to hear your favorite resources as well, because we know that we are not the only ones working on this issue, and there's a lot of really great information out there. And so we want to make sure that we're connecting folks to all of the great resources, including ours, so that folks have as many resources as possible. All right.
Okay.
So now,
I just dropped in your poll, Jessica.
Here we go. All right. So we did want to spend some time doing a little bit of information gathering because, again, we really want to make sure we're doing some really targeted and specialized technical assistance and that we can do our best jobs in supporting folks in the field around tech abuse. So we're curious to know if anyone has ever heard of or used any of the eTag resources so far, or if you've ever heard of or visited our website that is only a couple of months young. So it seems like there's a few people have heard of it, but many have not. So I'm excited about that response because now you're hearing about it.
And for those of you who are saying yes, you've heard of or used, if you've actually used an eTag resource, we'd love to know what you've used or what you've seen. If you want to use the text chat to let us know, that would be really helpful for us. So I think I'll go ahead and move this over, Jessica, unless you want me to keep it open.
No, that's perfect. You can move it on over. And as we're transitioning to the next question, I also wanted to mention that all of the toolkit resources that I referred to earlier will be available in Spanish on our website coming soon. All right. So in the next question, let's see if we can get the chat going. I think it's actually just a chat. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
So we wanted to learn more about where you are currently getting information related to technology abuse. Again, we know of many resources that are already in existence, and we wanted to make sure that, if we haven't already heard of it, that we're also doing our homework so that we can learn more and continue to build this comprehensive resource center. So if you can put in the chat box your responses, so where do you currently get information regarding tech abuse? And it looks like, thanks Alice, I have contacted several of the resources to find out how cyberstalking is being addressed in the courts. So and Alice, if you, oh, go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, so it sounds like, Alice, is that you used the resources on the eTag site, I think, is what that response is from.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Allie, thank you. Love is Respect is a source that you're going to, Break the Cycle, and the One Love Foundation. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All really great resources. And then I see the state attorney's victim practitioner training. And Megan, what state is that? I'm curious to know. In Florida. Okay, awesome. Florida. We've got some great friends in Florida with the Florida Coalition too, so I'd love to learn more about that. Rosa says, we currently don't use any resources, doing our best to get as educated as possible. We'll be attending the Technology Summit this summer. Awesome. And which Technology Summit, Rosa, are you referring to?
No, Jessica, I think this question it's so important, and I'm just like watching the responses come in because technology, I mean, you said this earlier, technology is changing so quickly that it seems like there's always something new, there's always something that, unfortunately people are using to harm others before we even know it exists. Right? And so finding those resources where you're able to get, up-to-date information is super important.
It is. And so I'm really excited to see that there are some of these other technology-related trainings happening across the country, right? Because I know we can't do it alone. So it's so great to see some of these other events. And thanks, Rosa. It looks like Technology Safety by the National Network to End DV. Yes, they are a really great resource as well. And then Allie put in the National Criminal Justice Training Center about protecting children in a digital age. Ooh, yes, that sounds great. Okay, so y'all can feel free to keep on with that question, but I am going to pose another question because this is another one that is going to also help inform our work in this new iteration of the project as we continue to figure out what additional resources folks want or need. So if you could use the chat feature again and let us know, now that you know all the things we already have, what resources or what additional resources do you need in your work?
This is another really important question, I think, for us in thinking about, how can we make sure that our technical assistance is really being useful and relevant to people. So appreciate you all really thinking about like what do you need? What would be useful? What are things maybe, is there a gap somewhere? I think this is an important conversation.
And in reference to the last question, Allie also mentioned hearing firsthand experiences from students after presentations. And so it also makes me think about what resources do you think young people need as well? So I would add that to this question. What resources do you need, and what resources do you think young people in your communities need? So I see resources on sexting specifically. Yes.
Michelle said creating a checklist to go over with a client related to tech abuse and safety.
I like that.
Oh, I think Rosa's comment is, resources to know if someone's tech device has been tampered with or hacked. I think that's something that I went to a training recently and was learning about some of the apps that can be installed on phones without anyone knowing. So I think that's really important information to have.
Yes, and we've been able to tap on some really awesome law enforcement folks that have kind of also helped to inform some of that, some of those practices. So we could definitely tap on them some more as we're developing things like that. And enforcement needs to accept reports on violations of DVRO. Let's see, additionally. Okay, and when you say, Alice, DVRO, can you tell us what that means?
Is it referring to the domestic
I'm guessing
violence
protective orders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's protective orders or something.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Domestic violence.
Yeah. Right. That so domestic violence restraining orders. I know every jurisdiction may have a different way that they refer to those. But yes, and data related to cyber stalking on those cases. That is a great idea. And Rosa, the resources in Spanish will be amazing. Yeah, we're really excited for that too. So we're trying to get those out as quickly as possible. And local cyber stalking group meetups to share information on how victims can protect themselves. Absolutely. There are some really interesting national technology communities of folks kind of in the cyber realm, and they, I'm learning, are hosting lots of meetups around, and they host different topics like doxing or safety, like privacy settings and things like that. And I just discovered them myself, so I'm exploring that as well, and would love to share and report back once we learn more about it. And then something about healthy technological boundaries in relationships. Oh, Ellie, I love that. I love that so much. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's great because that gets to, our goal too, to work around prevention resources.
Yes. So these are really great pieces of feedback. So I am going to allow folks keep them coming if you still have other lingering thoughts of resources you need. And I'm going to move into the next question, the next chat box question. So again, let's just keep it going in the chat box. What format do you find most useful for technical assistance resources? And when we say format, you can think about, and some of y'all have already given some really great ideas in terms of checklists and things like that, but is the format helpful to do webinars, or what format would you like your checklist resource, for example? And we, again, will plan to use our website as the hub for all of these resources, but it's always nice to get an idea of what seems most helpful for folks and what format seems most helpful for folks. And while folks are kind of reflecting on that question, I will share that we were very intentional in making sure that the resources we currently created were relatively multimedia. So that's why you see podcasts and webinars and like kind of written materials, both literature and kind of those quick resource guides. So we did want to come to this new resource creation process with thinking about that as well. And so one of the resources, multimedia resources we will be working on is an educational video series. So I'm reading some in the chat box. Emails on standardized timeline that offers information and updates regarding tech safety, so like new apps that are coming out or protective measures and laws that are coming out. Yeah, so some updates. Okay, that's a really great idea.
I'll have to, Jessica, I just want to plug again our newsletter mailing list. So if you're not on our mailing list, right, like I think that's a great idea, Megan. And so if we, maybe do some kind of a newsletter or some kind of an update, we would definitely send that out to folks on our mailing list.
And then I'm also seeing handouts and downloadable PDFs or videos to show to teens and youth. I love that. I love that. I love that. So we'll give it just another quick moment for folks to respond or reflect on that question. And I also see that Tori has added in there for us the National Sexual Violence Resource Center palm card that's about digital consent. It was part of their Sexual Assault Awareness Month I Ask theme. So Tori, thank you for putting that direct link in our chat box for folks to access. And then I also am seeing discussion guides on certain topics. And Allie, when you say discussion guides, is that discussion, who would be the audience or the discussion group? Or with youth or adults? And Megan, I'll answer your question. Ashley's got it in the chat box also, that for folks that are interested in signing up for the eTag mailing list, you can click the button at the top of our eTag website right on the home page. And then literature created specifically for victims and webinars and podcasts. We appreciate those. Awesome. Good, good. And then, Allie, those discussion guides for teens and youth and one for adults, parents, teachers. Love it. Yes. Okay. So feel free to keep those coming. But I'll move us along, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley for a bit.
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you all so much for all of your input. I think I'm pretty new to this project, and so this is also just really great for me to hear what some of the needs are and what some of kind of the ways that you like to receive training and technical assistance. So the types of technical assistance that we currently have available are in a multitude of kind of like modalities and platforms. So We will be doing more virtual training, so like webinars. This one is, really just kind of an introductory to the project to kind of ground us in tech-facilitated abuse and then get some information from you. But in the future, we will be looking at specific topics and areas of interest and importance. And so we'll be doing a webinar series. As Jessica said, we have podcasts on the site right now. We have a couple more that will be up on the site within the next week or so. And so those are really great to hear from folks who, whether they've experienced tech abuse or who are doing work on the ground with folks. That's a great way to do that. We'll be doing some videos. The toolkit is all available online, and you can access that now. We also can work with organizations via the phone or hop on a Zoom call or something to do a consultation and to hear what the actual needs are of your agency or organization. And we'll be conducting in-person training institutes in 2020, but we can also work with organizations to consider in-person training needs. So we do have some, I think, limited resources for in-person training, but we would be happy to explore that. And Jessica, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more. I think you definitely know more than I do about the Youth Training and Technical Assistance team that is being put together as we speak.
Absolutely. So one of our philosophies at Break the Cycle is that rather than me training adults on what young people need, why not have a young person help do that training, right? So we have been able to explore opportunities to build youth technical assistance teams with OVW. And so we're really excited to be able to start a youth technical assistance team for this particular project. And so we are working with young people to help develop the content that we're going to be creating in the next couple of years. But they will also be available and filtered through us, of course. So if you're reaching out to us via email or phone and you have questions about tech abuse or you want to get an input from a young person on our technical assistance team, we can make that happen. So that's one of the things we're really excited about because we really value their input and their advice, especially if the folks that we hope to serve are closer to their ages than our own. And so I also wanted to mention that the applications to join the Youth Technical Assistance team for ETAG are actually still open for another couple of weeks. So again, you can find that information on our website at intechabuse.org. It's in the news section, and thanks again, Tori, for putting that direct link in the chat box. But again, if you have any young people who may be interested, they will be able to travel with us and do some co-facilitated training or webinars, but they will have a hand in all of these products. And so we're really excited to start that project with them and be able to field questions with their input. So be sure to reach out to us if you ever want their input, and also spread the word. There's 2 more weeks for folks to apply.
So I think, Jessica, I'm going to hand it back over to you to talk about some of the additional resources that we have identified in being really helpful.
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned before, and I know Ashley has too, there is a list of kind of referral sites or additional resources honoring the expansive work of other organizations and other projects as well. And these are ones that we found to be really helpful. This is just a short, brief version of our resource list on our website, but just so that folks are aware, the cyber civil rights community is doing some work around online removal of content that has been shared without consent. The National Network to End Domestic Violence, which I believe was referenced in the chat box earlier, also has a tech safety project and a tech safety app that they have supported and worked on as well. Without My Consent is a really great resource, and it was started by some litigators who are working particularly with women who were being harassed online and who were having their content exposed online as well. So they've got some great resources. And then there's information about Cybersecurity Awareness Month for anyone who may want to take up participating in that. And then finally, there's a evidence guide for gathering tech abuse evidence for court. This one is slightly different than the one we've produced, only in that our version is really aimed at working with young people, so it's very accessible visually and language-wise for young people. But the one from NCJ, FCJ really could be distributed for adult survivors as well. We know that young people are not the only ones experiencing tech-facilitated abuse, for sure. And then the last resource I wanted to share is just kind of the easiest resource that any of us can start with today, and that's really related to using platform-specific privacy settings and reporting sites. Again, I think most folks are aware of how to navigate to those via each platform, and I'm talking about social media platforms primarily, in order to navigate privacy settings. But in case folks are not aware, this is something that we tend to share with folks quite a bit. So wanted to make sure folks knew that this is something very easy that folks can do right away. It's just checking your privacy settings and checking the reporting links on each of those respective platforms. So we've put that whole comprehensive list for you there. You'll also see kind of step-by-step on reporting on platform sites. And that kind of information is also included in our cyber safety planning guide, so that it kind of walks young people through those step-by-step measures. Again, this information is already on the platforms, but what we find is that more often than not, people are really not familiar or they have never really looked at setting up their privacy settings on their social media accounts. And so it's just a great first step for folks to take. And so we're coming up to the end of our webinar, and we wanted to open it up for questions and answers, thoughts, reflections, anything else you got for us. So if you have any questions for us, feel free to type them in the chat feature again that you see on the right-hand side, and you'd like to hang out a little longer to see about any other questions y'all have.
Thanks, Jessica. So it looks like some folks are typing in the chat box, so we'll see what pops up. So again, and thank you to Tori. Tori's one of my colleagues here at CalCASA for putting all of those links in the text chat. That's really helpful to see all of the different resources that have come up today.
And know that this is not like the last time you can ask us questions either. Again, the hope of just sharing this information with you all is just so that you are also aware that we're here for you. You can send us questions anytime if you're thinking about this stuff. We get jazzed up about kind of thinking about complex issues related to tech-facilitated abuse, and if we don't know the answers, we love hunting them down to figure out what other great folks in our network can help respond to those types of questions that can come up, because yeah, it can be a web, it can be a maze for sure to figure out how to navigate some of the types of things that we're seeing occur amongst young people in their technology world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, for those of you who had not heard of eTag before today, exploring the website and just seeing what is available, you know, if you see things that have been really useful or if you see something maybe that there's like a gap, let us know. Send us an email. Tori just put in the email addresses. I think that would be really helpful for us to know going forward and looking at the topics and resources that we create in the future. So we definitely wanted to give space for questions, but I think, Jessica, if maybe folks don't have questions because, again, a lot of this is probably pretty new, or I just saw one pop. There's a couple popping up, so let's take a look at that. It's always that, oh, I spoke too soon situation. So I'm going to read Megan's out loud. Are there proactive resources clients can use to prevent or protect from cybercrime? For example, if a client is concerned that someone is or will hack into their computer or phone remotely, is there something they can do to protect themselves?
I am actually pulling up the website for Have I Been Pwned? And this is a resource that can help them know if their data is being leaked in any shape or form. It is not specifically to show if somebody's hacking into their computer necessarily, but it does. But this website that I am about to put in the chat box is one measure of kind of thinking about your cyber security and cyber safety. It's kind of like when people Google themselves just to see what kind of information is out there about them. This is one step further in that it's a really great resource that will tell you, based on all of the data and metadata that is out there about you, where you may have some security breaches or where you may have some sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, where you may have some potential exposure of your data. And this is more related to hackers that may be using your login and password for hacking purposes, but sometimes those hackers are people that we know, right? Or sometimes those hackers can be people that are researching you or are stalking you online. And so it is a great first step just to see what kinds of information of your own is leaked. And I know I did this for the first time recently, about 6 months ago, and didn't realize that I think it was my LinkedIn account that had a data breach, and so there were some security issues there. And the best thing to do, right, is just to say, you know, change your password and those sorts of things, which sounds very commonsensical, but in reality, a lot of our passwords are not very strong passwords, and for somebody who is tech savvy, they could probably crack your passwords pretty easily. So there's also lots of great resources out there on how to develop stronger and safer passwords that you can actually remember. And I can send some follow-up information on that, because that is actually one of the best resources, is to have kind of strong passwords that really only you can know. And then on the flip side of that, Megan, I think the other piece I would like to mention about like password protection and things like that is that in cases where, in domestic violence cases or dating violence cases, where maybe an abuser is demanding passwords, another kind of strategy around that for a survivor's safety is to compartmentalize their tech use. So what that means is to basically come up with one email account that runs certain accounts, and then come up with a different email address that's linked to different accounts. And so for a survivor who maybe it's safer for them to share their password, they can share their password with only with the account that's linked to only certain accounts. So for example, I may use my Gmail email for my social media accounts, and that's the one I might share with my abuser. But I also have a more secure, separate email account that is only linked to other more private accounts and applications. And so that's one strategy that a lot of cyber safety folks are suggesting, is to make sure that you can compartmentalize all of your accounts. So not using the same email for everything under the sun, and changing it up some. Let's see. And then I see another question. We need to be able to get law enforcement to take this evidence and assist in holding abusers accountable. We also need to be able to ensure that we know how we're doing by having data to back up our successes. I love that you said that, Alice, and one of the ways we started this project was actually with more of a criminal justice lens. And so some of the information that we learned and some of the resource development that we have was actually heavily informed with law enforcement folks. And what we're hearing by and large from that community of professionals is sometimes the evidence we collect for technology abuse, it's hard for it to stick in some courts. So I think this tends to be more of a localized issue in some cases, just because maybe judges are maybe sometimes behind in terms of their understanding of admissible evidence, or it could be just that the law enforcement community sometimes has a real hard time getting together the digital evidence that they need, especially when it involves those secondary sites. So screenshots can only go so far. If they're trying to collect evidence and they need to go to Facebook, for example, there's a lot of red tape, and it takes quite a bit of time. And in some cases, we're seeing that, like, unless it's a life or death scenario, a lot of those social media folks are not releasing evidence to the law enforcement community with any sense of urgency. So, but yes, we agree that definitely needs to happen more. And I love that you're mentioning how we're doing evaluation and data tracking so that we can back this up. So we can definitely include that as well as we're envisioning this next phase of the project. All right, great questions.
Yeah. Thanks for handling those, Jessica, and thank you to Megan and Alice. You know, again, for folks who maybe have questions that they're not ready to pose now or coming up, feel free to send us an email.
And Alice, I see your next question around could the Safe at Home program allow victims not only to use their address, but allow victims to register their phones so that the law enforcement can obtain information directly. I am not sure about that, so I'd have to do some follow-up information unless, Ashley, you have any context to that. But I would have to look into that some more, Alice.
I don't. That would also be something for me to learn. Great, so it looks like we can follow up with Alice on that. All right.
And we have your emails when you registered. So yes, I can follow up with you, Alice, via email.
Okay, great. Well, again, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And again, you can send an email to etag@breakthecycle or etag@talcasa. Jessica and my email addresses are also up on the screen. And then please visit the new website and take a look around and let us know what you think. But I want to thank you, and Jessica, I'll let you say some closing words too.
Yeah, we really appreciate you all, and again, it's just really exciting to see the interest around this project, and we look forward to hearing from all of you as you continue to navigate technology abuse. Just keep us in mind and reach out. We're here for you. We got your back. So, and very soon we will have some young people, some youth experts as well to help with navigating any questions you may have. So have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Great. This will end our web conference for today.